So Spencer, Nick Chubb's future. So we broke his foot. We know not going to play the rest of the year. Not under contract. He wants to come back, and it sounds like the Browns want him back. What do you think happens with Nick Chubb?
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting a chance to get into this because I do think this is going to be one of the big storylines going into this offseason, even if people think, Nick Chubb's not going to be the same player ever again or whatever. Because listen, like there's a couple reasons why I think the door is very much still open for a return. One of them is what you mentioned, Dave. Like Nick Chubb, literally just last week. Like the timing of all this couldn't have been more ironic, I guess, in that way, where he gets hurt and it's a season-ending injury, and now we're having this conversation because just last week he said he wants to retire Brown. It's important to him to finish his career where he started. We know how much Cleveland means to him. He wrote that great piece in the Players Tribune about how it was the fans who really helped him get through the rehab from the knee injury last year and got him back out on the field. And I'm sure that'll be the case again, with this injury where he'll rehab and get back on the field, and the fans will be sort of a driving force behind it. So we know he loves it here. We know he wants to be here. I think as disappointing as the injury is, it does probably help the Browns from a financial standpoint be able to afford somebody like Chubb. It's not like they have to break the bank to pay somebody like Nick, who is now coming off of another season-ending injury where there was already some questions about like how much more time does he need to kind of get right or get back to being some version of himself from before. And so I think that kind of helps their cause if they're not trying to overspend this offseason, or they have limited cash to spend. They can probably get Nick Chubb at a decent value. And maybe they give him a little bit extra because he's Nick Chubb, and they appreciate him and they love him. The fan base loves him. And you don't want to see a guy not get paid because of injuries. But I do think it helps their cause in that way. And then the other part of this, Dave, is just, I mean, it's the easiest PR move a team can make, right? Like with the Deshaun Watson thing still looming large, the albatross of a contract that still remains with this team, and the fact that they have to sort of sort through that. And he's probably going to still be on this roster next year. We saw the report over the weekend from our colleague Mary Kay Cabot, who indicates that he will be there and he'll probably be in the mix to start and at least compete for the job and all these different things, and that they still believe he could play at a high level. Like he's going to be here next year because I just think the nature of the contract forces your hand there. And so with all that kind of hanging overhead, it's an easy thing to sell to the fan base to keep Nick Chubb on this team and give fans something to at least be excited about or root for or a positive thing. It's again, when you're trying to put like lipstick on a pig, this is like the easiest or the cheapest thing of lipstick that you could purchase, and putting Nick Chubb back out there and keeping him on this roster. So I just think it makes sense from too many different angles. And I do envision a path towards Nick Chubb still being with the Browns next year and maybe even fulfilling his wish of retiring a Cleveland Brown here at some point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And we didn't really get to see him from what Kevin Stefanski has said. Might not require surgery on the foot, which
Yeah.
would be good, because you were starting to see little glimpses and little visions that he was going to get that explosion back, and that when
Yeah.
you undergo a knee injury of that magnitude, last thing to come back is that burst and explosion that made Nick Chubb elite. So that I'm not saying that's not in there. Let's see if that can come back.
Yeah, there were moments, right? Like I think in Pittsburgh there was a few really good runs. I even think yesterday against the Chiefs, the play he fumbled on that set up the touchdown drive for the Chiefs, like the short field there. It was like a 10-yard run up the middle, and carrying guys in his back. It looked like vintage Nick Chubb, and then out of nowhere, the Chiefs defender, I forget who it was at the top of my head, made a really good play and punching the ball out, and gets the ball back to the Chiefs. Nick Chubb doesn't fumble a lot. That was just kind of a fluky play. But yeah, like there was moments where you saw it, and there was kind of a general consensus these last couple weeks that maybe some people overestimated the time it was going to take for him to get right. I'm not saying that was you or that was me, but I do think there was people who thought like, oh, he'll just once he gets back in the field, he'll be Nick Chubb again. And the history kind of shows you might need a little more time for the severity of knee injury that he had last year to get back to being yourself. And so there was a lot of optimism that he might come back next year and week one be able to kind of hit the ground running and look more like the Nick Chubb of old. Even if he can't get 100% back to who he was, 80% of that version of Nick Chubb is still pretty damn good. So yeah, I think there's some encouraging signs that he could be back next year. And maybe with now the off season to recover from both the foot and get the knees sort of right a little bit more, he can be an even more effective player and we'll see more of those signs in 2025.